All right, guys, so we're going to play Around the World. I'll be recording this so you guys could have access to this. So let's begin with this first one. Just like the first part of the quiz, it's going to just say state the slope. So find the slope, rise over run, go for it. There it is, nice and close. So the key to calculating the slope here, or to counting the slope here, is to pick nice coordinates. So you have to, like from left to right, your first nice coordinate would be right here at that location. So I recommend on your quiz drawing that dot and then continuing on until you get to your next nice coordinate, which would be right here. Don't go here because that's not a nice coordinate. This coordinate is 0, negative 2 point something. So this is a nice coordinate right here. So you have to first identify your two nice coordinates. Then you could say, oh, my slope is negative 1 over 3. So if you have negative 1 over 3, get up and move. M equals negative 1 over 3. If you don't have negative 1 over 3, stay where you're at. Let's jump to number 2. Go for it. Talk to a partner. So obviously we have 2 points. They're asking for the slope. They're not asking for an equation. They just want the slope, which is rise over run, and we need the slope formula. The slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and you just label your values x, y, and x, y, and this one's your first point, 1, 1, your second point, 2, 2. Then you simply plug them in, and you do the math. So y2 is 4, y1 is 4, x2 is negative 2, x1 is negative 3, change to plus plus. Either way, 4 take away 4 is 0. And 0 divided by any number, in this case 1, is still 0. So when 0 is on top, the answer is 0, right? If you did this on a calculator, 0 divided by 1, it'll give you 0 as an answer. Let's try another similar one. By the way, these first couple of questions deal with slope. So guess what the first couple of questions on the quiz are tomorrow? Slope, that's right. Try this one. It's another slope question. So once again, this is a slope formula problem. M equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, and you get your x's and your y's from the coordinates themselves. Your first point, this is your second point. So y2 is 6, y1 is 4, x2 is negative 1, x1 is negative 1. The minus minus changes to plus plus. 6 take away 4 up on top, that's 2. Negative 1 and a positive 1 is 0. And if you try to do this on the calculator, it's going to say error. Why is that? Because you can't divide by 0. It's undefined. The value is not defined. So you should put undefined. Okay, you can't leave it like this. I'll give you maybe half credit if you leave it like that, but you should write down undefined slope. Visually, that means that it's perfectly vertical. It's so steep you can't define it, kind of like the wall. If you're watching this at home and you're practicing, I recommend pausing before seeing the work, trying to do it, and then unpausing and watching the work. Let's move on to number 4. There's number 4. Write a slope-intercept form equation of the line that has the slope of negative 3 and has the y-intercept of 2. So you need to know what certain words mean, like what does slope-intercept form mean? Go for it. Guys, this one is like the easiest question you could possibly do in math, right? Because they're asking for a slope-intercept form equation. Maybe I should have done slope in blue. And if you know your slope and you know your y-intercept, then you could write it in y equals mx plus b. And guess what? They give you both. They give you the slope, which is negative 3. That's your m. They give you the b. Probably should have done that in red. That's your b value. So you just plug it in, and you'll have y equals negative 3x plus 2. Ta-da! If you have that right, get up and move. Got it wrong, stay where you're at. Okie dokie, moving on to number 5. Here we go. Write an equation in point slope form. This is not slope intercept, it's point slope. So you need to know what that is. And of the line that has a slope negative 5 and passes through the point negative 4, negative 7. So let's begin on this explanation. They're asking for point slope, right? And what is point slope? Y minus y1 equals m parenthesis x minus x1. Okay, that's what you need to have memorized. And when you read point slope, that's what you need to know. So if they give you a slope, which they do, and if they give you a point, which they do, then you're able to just plug it right in. What I recommend doing is to rewrite it, but with blank spots. And then simply plug in your y1 value, which is negative 7, right? I got that from here. My x1 value is going to go right here. The negative 4 is going to go right there. And of course, the m value, they gave us the negative 5. So that's going to go right here, negative 5. The only other thing you could do is change to plus plus. And that's your answer because they ask for point slope form. You would leave it like that. If you gave it to me in slope intercept form, that's not, I mean, that's great that you know how to do that, but that's not what I'm asking for. And on the quiz, I'll be specific. Give it to me in point slope form or slope intercept form. So if you have that, get up and move. If you don't, stay where you're at. Number 6. Go for it. Do it. Write an equation in slope-intercept form that has a slope and that passes through the point 15, negative 3. So they are asking for slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b. But what you should do is just take what they give you and go with the quickest, easiest form for you. So they give you a slope and they give you a point. What's the best form? Point slope, right? If they give you a point and they give you a slope, go with point slope. So let's write down point slope. And let's leave the blank spots. And let's plug in our x1, y1. So y1 is negative 3. Our m value up here is 4/5. And our x1 value is 15. So this is point slope form. And if I ask for point slope form, that would be it, besides changing the minus to plus plus. But we're not asking for point slope. We're asking for slope intercept, y equals mx plus b. And we know that y equals mx plus b does not have these parentheses, right? So we need to get rid of the parentheses, and we don't have a y plus 3. We have y by itself. So let's get rid of the parentheses first by distributing. 4/5 times x is 4/5 x. 4/5 times 15. You could put the 15 over a 1, and then you could multiply 4 times 15 and then 5 times 1. 4 times 15 is 60, and 5 times 1 is 5. So you'd really have 60 over 5. I want to put that over here on the side. And 60 divided by 5 happens to be 12. It works out nicely. So you have minus 12 right here. Bring down the equal, bring down the y plus 3, and your final step will be to get rid of that 3 by subtracting 3. So your final slope-intercept form equations, y equals 4/5 x minus 15. If you have that, get up and move. If you don't, stay where you're at. Write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the point 0.5 and has a slope 4. So don't just jump right into the math. Think about what they're telling you. Talk to a partner. Ladies and gentlemen, just like in any other math situation, there's many roads to the same place, right? And I want to teach you the quickest. I mean, you could have said, oh, there's a point and the slope. So you could have plugged it into point slope form and then distributed, and you would change it to slope intercept. But the quickest, shortest path is to understand y equals mx plus b. That's really, if you know your slope and you know your y-intercept, you're good, right? So what is your slope? Your slope is 4. So we have y equals, the slope is 4. Now the question is, do we know the y-intercept? And the answer is yes. The coordinate 0, 5, 0 on the x, 5 on the y. If you think about that, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is a point on the y-axis. That is your y-intercept. So you just put a plus 5 right there and you're done. Okay. Get up and move if you got that right. Even if you did it the long way, you should have gotten that anyway with point slope form and then the manipulation. Same deal. All right, we're going to switch it up a bit. This is nice and easy. Are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Just write down the answer, cover it up, and if you get it right, you move. If you don't get it right, you stay. Talk to a partner. Okay, so the key to determining whether they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither is knowing that both of your equations are in either of the forms that we've learned already. It has to be in slope-intercept form to see slope, or point slope form. So this guy, it's already ready. It's in slope-intercept form. We could clearly see that the slope is 2/3. Now this guy over here is not in slope-intercept form. Y is not by itself, so you have to actually divide by -2, divide by -2, divide by -2. Now some people will look at this slope and think, oh, that's an opposite reciprocal slope. But the truth is, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So when you look at the slope 2/3 from this one compared to the slope 3/2 from this one, they are not opposite reciprocal slopes. And they're not the same slope, so it's neither. If you got that right, get up and move. Got it wrong, stay where you're at. Neither. All right, one more. Let's do one more of those. Parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Of course, you need to change those equations so you could see the actual slope. You cannot see the slope yet. The slope, I'll just tell you right now, the slope is not 3. Okay? The slope is not 2. You need to manipulate. You need to change both equations. Then you could look at the slope and compare slopes. So make sure you don't cheat. We're going to manipulate both equations. Let's get them both into slope-intercept form. Let's get y by itself. So we're going to subtract 2x, rewrite it. That'll be 3y equals -2x plus 12. Final step would be to divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. We're going to end up with y equals, the slope is -2/3. Of course, you have an x plus 4. And then the other one, all you need to do is divide by 2, and divide by 2. You know what? I'm just going to leave it like that because I already see the slope right here. The slope is 3/2. So when you compare positive 3/2, if you change the sign and flip it, it really does become negative 2/3. Those are perpendicular slopes. So if you wrote perpendicular down, get up and move. If you didn't write perpendicular, stay where you're at. Alrighty, moving on to number 10. What's happening here? Sorry about that, technical difficulties. Number 10, write an equation in point slope form of the line that's perpendicular to this line that I give you and passes through the point that I give you. Talk to a partner. So here's the deal, guys. They're letting us know that they want an equation. They want us to write it in point slope form. Okay, so we need a point and we need a slope. Those are the two things that we need. Indirectly, they're giving us a slope. Why is that? Because perpendicular, if our line is perpendicular to this line, we know that our slope is going to be the opposite reciprocal slope of that guy. So indirectly, they're telling us our slope, which is positive 2/3. Okay? And they are directly giving you a point, xy, because your line passes through that point. So now that you know the point, now that you know the slope, it should be really easy to write it in point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m parenthesis x minus x1, close parenthesis. So y minus blank spot equals blank spot x minus blank spot. Y minus y1, that's negative 5. M is 2/3. X is 4. And the only other thing you could do is change it to plus plus and don't do anything else. It says point slope form. This is point slope form. If you got that right, get up and move. Got it wrong, stay where you're at. I'm going to continue reviewing here. There's several other questions that pop out on the test. Number 11, write an equation in point slope form of the line that passes through that point. And that point is negative 4, positive 3, and is parallel. What does parallel mean? Same slope. Same slope, right? So they give you this line, and you know that the line has a slope 2/3, so your slope also has to be 2/3, the same exact slope. So you don't care about that equation at all once you get the slope. You could scratch it out if you want to, right? All you care about is getting the slope from that parallel line, which is the same slope. So what do we have here, guys? We have a point and we have a slope. So the easiest form to write it in is point slope form, and luckily that's what they're asking for, point slope form. So let's do exactly that. So there's my point slope form. There's my point slope form with blank spots, and y1 is 3, and my m value is 2/3, and my x1 value is negative 4. All you have to do is change that minus minus to plus plus, and because it says point slope form, this is it. This is your answer that you're going to write on your answer column. Moving on, number 12. This one says write an equation in slope-intercept form, okay? Slope-intercept. We're talking about the y-intercept right there. So if you have the slope and you have the y-intercept, then you'll be able to write in y equals mx plus b. But let's just take a look at what they give us and then worry about changing it to slope-intercept form. So they tell us that our line is parallel to this line. Parallel means same slope, so they're indirectly giving us a slope. So our slope is going to be the same exact one as the one in that equation right there, 2/3. So that's our slope of our equation. And then it says that it has the x-intercept, and not the y-intercept, an x-intercept. So if you think about that, where would it cross the x-axis at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? So if we think, what is that location? That location is 6, 0. And that's an actual point of the line. It crosses through the x-axis right at that point. I mean, to be more specific, it crosses through this point going up 2/3, right? So we know it's like this. But anyway, we know a point. The point is 6, 0, and we know a slope. It was parallel to the original equation that was given to us. So now we could write it in point slope form. So of course, when you use point slope form, leave the blank spots and then plug in your values. The coordinate was y1 was 0, and the x1 was 6, and the m value was 2/3. And now we need to change it to slope-intercept, right? If you leave it like that, you don't get full credit because they're asking for slope-intercept. And slope-intercept's y equals mx plus b. Slope-intercept does not have parentheses. So you'd have to distribute 2/3 times x is 2/3 x. and then 2/3 times negative 6. You could put the negative 6 over 1 and multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. So 2 times 6 is 12 and 3 times 1 is 3. So you'd end up with 12 over 3, and that's really 4. So you have a 4 right here, but with the minus sign. And the y minus 0, that's simply y. So you have y equals 2/3 x minus 4, and that would be your slope-intercept form equation. That's what they're asking for, slope-intercept form. That's what we have, slope-intercept form, so we're done. Any questions? Let's move on to the next one. This is an interesting one. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form that of the line, it should say of the line that passes through -4, -1, and 2, -4, and write it in slope-intercept form. Why did I repeat that twice? I don't know. Sorry, typos all over the place. But what's the only thing that we could do with 2 coordinates?
y2 minus y1.
Yep, the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's apply the slope formula, do the division, the subtractions, plug in your y2 value, which is -4, your y1 value, which is -1, your x2 value, which is 2, and your x1 value, which is -4. And of course, the minus minuses must change the plus plus. And then simplify your numerator and your denominator. Up on top, you're going to end up with -4 plus 1, that's -3. And on the bottom, 2 plus 4 is 6. So your final slope is going to be -1/2. That's your slope. We found that with the slope formula. So now what do we have? We found our slope and we have some points. So what form is the best to use? Point slope. You have a point, you have a slope, might as well do point slope. So point slope form is y minus y1 equals m parenthesis x minus x1, and of course use blank spots. And then plug in your values. Your y2 value, or actually y1, right? y1 value is -1. Your m value is -1/2. And your x1 value is -4. So the minuses must change the plus plus. Now if the question said, if the instruction said write it in point slope form, you'd be done. But it says slope intercept. So we need to change it, get rid of the parentheses by distributing -1 times, or -1/2 times x is -1/2 x. -1/2 times 4, put the 4 over 1, or you could just do it on a calculator, you get -2 as an answer. You have the equal sign and you have y plus 1 on the left side of this equation. So my final step will be to get rid of that 1 by subtracting 1 and subtracting 1, and we will get our final answer, y equals -1/2 x minus 3. So that one was a lot of work. You had to use a slope formula, and then you had to use the point slope form, and then change it to slope intercept form. It's like 3 problems in one right there. Now this one is challenging right here, number 14. It says write the slope intercept form equation of this line. So if you had an m and if you had a b, you'd be able to write it in slope intercept form. So do we have an m?
Yes.
Yes, all you have to do is count rise over run, but you need to pick clean points. So like you got to find a clean point. This is a clean point right here. Let's actually put a dot there. That's the coordinate 3, 6, if you can't tell. And let's find another clean point. That'd be all the way down here at 4, 1. So on your quiz tomorrow, I would mark the points that are nice, and I would even label them if you want. Anyway, I could count my slope. I could use a slope formula with the coordinates, but it's easier to count. It goes down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes over 1. So down 5 is negative rise of 5 and over 1. So my slope is -5 over 1. That's my slope. Or you could just say -5. Okay? That's my slope. I wish I could see my b value. But the thing is, this line doesn't cross the y-axis till way off the graph, somewhere way up there. So I cannot resort to the visual of where it crosses the y-axis. So what could I do now? What do I have now? I have a slope and I have a point. So I might as well jump right into point slope form with my first point being 3, 6. So let's jump into point slope form. Point slope form is y minus y1, but we know our y1 value is 6, so we might as well plug it in right there. 6 equals m, which we said was -5. You could put -5 over 1, but it's easier to just write it as -5. And then minus x1. x1 is the x value of the first point, which is 3. So that's your point slope form equation. But the instructions say to write it in slope-intercept form. So you'd have to distribute negative 5 times x is negative 5x, negative 5 times negative 3 is positive 15. Bring down the equal sign, bring down y minus 6. And your final step would be to get rid of that minus 6 by adding 6 to both sides. So your final equation, your final slope-intercept form equation should be y equals negative 5x plus 21. Now this makes total sense because the slope is negative 5. It really does go down 5 over 1. And my y-intercept would be at positive 21. I mean, think about it. It would be at positive 21 way up here off the graph, which makes total sense. And we're going to have an extra credit question, and it's not going to be this exact question, but it could be something similar to it. I will pick something from the previous chapter, which is like solving absolute value inequalities. Would anybody like to see this?
Yes.
Sure. What's step 1 on solving any inequality or any absolute value inequality? Isolate. So we're going to subtract 1. We're going to have negative 3, absolute value x minus 2, absolute value of less than or equal to negative 9, right? Okay, final step would be to get rid of the multiplication of negative 3, divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. So you'll have the absolute value of x minus 2 is greater than or equal to, because you flip it because we divided by a negative, and you get a positive 3 right there. Now that you have it isolated, now you need to do your positive and negative situations. The positive situations, writing it exactly the way it is without the inequalities. And the negative situation is the same thing, x minus 2, but instead of a greater than or equal to, you have to flip the inequality and change the sign of the right side. So you solve both. You go plus 2, plus 2. You're going to end up with x is greater than or equal to 5. That could be one answer. And then plus 2, x is less than or equal to negative 1. Now the question is, do I write both of these together as a compound inequality, or do I keep them apart with the word or? The only way to know that is to think about their graphs. So if you go for a quick number line, here's negative 1, here's positive 5. This one says x is greater than or equal to 5. So greater than or equal to is a solid dot. Greater than is that way. And the other one is a less than or equal to negative 1. And less than or equal to is this way. So these are apart. So you would just put the or right between it. But I do want to say that it's important to note that if this area would have been together, you'd have to write this together with the x in the middle and the smaller number on this side and the bigger number on this side as a compound inequality. But right here they're apart, so you don't do that. You just write it with the word or. But if they're together, you have to write it together as a compound inequality with the x in the middle, smaller number on this side, bigger number on that side, with the less than symbols on both of them. I hope this helps, and I hope you study.